No intro today. No happy, upbeat welcome. Just UVS, why? Why do you make me do this? It was going so well. Yes, there have been decisions, and yes, your banning of one of my favorite cards has hurt me. But why do you make me come out of my non-article reviewing videos? I'd stop doing them because the articles were going quite well. There was no need for me to have to react and dissect these articles. It was established who they were for. It was established why they were being written. But then you drop the EU regionals article. And we're recording at the time. We've got previews and other stuff recorded to me. Richard are busy. And I drop out of it to messages from the EU community. Pissed that we have been snubbed yet again. Our winners and / event did not get a post or a congratulations publicly until a week after the event. OCE got one pretty much immediately. And, you know, I can get there busy. We go from regional straight into AOT2, straight into Star Trek. It's a busy time, and we can talk about product fatigue and how much that's affecting the company another time. But when you blatantly snub people, and I'm not talking like individuals, I'm not going to go into this, is the company in general, because this is a company decision. And I get the EU article was just cherry picking decks that the devs liked. That's fine, that's cool. There's no real dissection of this. Also, I'm not having a go at the people that wrote this article. It's a nice article for them to cherry pick decks, but in comparison to the NA article, it's not good enough. NA Regionals Atlanta was the first event we had since AOT. And that is very clear from here that they are pushing how impactful AOT was on the meta. We've got defining errors, we've got the breakdown showing that the big UVS sets since last year, Jetburn, Yu Hakusho, Girl Power, Battle for Humanity, were dominating the card amount, showing that these new cards are powerful, that our power scaling is going up. Very, very cool, very, very in-depth. Full character breakdown for Atlanta. And yes, Atlanta was a huge event. Don't get me wrong. And it showed that they were continuing to learn. It was a very cool article. And this got me excited. This level of depth going into the event, breaking it down, defining the error, got me excited for what we were going to see for the EU one. We're smaller events. We're more concentrated. So the information you can get about our playstyles and our regionals is even more condensed. And that is so, so very cool. But then you get this, and you just get cherry-picked decks that highlight the adversity in it. And yes, Smiling Titan from EU got errata. Risky Encounter got banned, and so did Twisting Azure. So those decks maybe don't deserve to be on the list. But you can't use that as basically a way to say that they weren't featured because of that. Because Ghidorah from OCE was running Risky Encounter. So, as much as the article says we might see these decks across from us, we're not going to be seeing this one because it's not a viable one. What annoys me more is that this is a missed opportunity by the design team. I love the playtesters. I got playtesters who are friends, and if this upsets them, please do reach out to me and I'll be happy to talk it out. I'm not having a go at anyone individually here. I'm saying that this article is a missed opportunity and frankly, really insulting to some of the EU players. We had no Foundations Mimic that topped the event. You want to talk about road decks, you don't talk about the decks that has won 2 regionals, that has objectively got more powerful through things like Determined Advance. What you can talk about with this is the addition of new foundations such as Strategic Meeting, which was an amazing addition allowing for them to play around Izuku Midoriya's manipulation of the attacks. You talk about the fact that we now have Determined Advance, which was an attack that is a 6-9 that cannot be slowed down. Very, very, very cool. And we've got Disarming Glance. We're looking at Ben's list as well. We've got 2 Godzillas, but Godzilla is not a rogue deck at this point. No Foundation's Mimic was a rogue deck. You want to talk about really cool decks? The Bakugos, the 2 Bakugo Deaths and the 1 Bakugo Air. Yasha's Bakugo Air, this was his first event. This is a missed opportunity to highlight a new-ish player who's coming into their first major event with an untested quantity. Bakugo hadn't shown up really at any other events, and the Hastings group and Yasha had come up with this list by themselves and created an Air Bakugo list which wasn't using Combined Firepower, which wasn't using Azure. Yes, it was using Risky, and it was still able to make it to top 4 because Yasha played that really well. And he went through 4 Izuku Midoriyas on the move on his way up here. Speaking of Izuku Midoriya, we'll come back to Michael Liam's list in a second. OCE and EU were the first events where Tekken and Izuku Midoriya on the move were legal. And there's no mention of that. If I was an IP holder for those 2, I'd be pissed that AOT got the whole grand, look how impactful we've been on the meta, look how cool our cards are. And nowhere in the EU Oceanic article does it mention that Izuku Midoriya was the most represented character in the EU event. Nowhere does it talk about how many Devil Jins showed up, how many Jins or June showed up. It doesn't talk about how impactful those cards were, because I know there was Devil Jins there. I know how cool those decks were, and they could have been major highlights. It's just annoying. And looking at Mike and Liam, you could have talked about the expansion of the meta. You could have taken your NA winner, Kevin Broberg, and gone, this was the winner of the NA deck. This is the winner of the NA regionals. And the EU players took that list, looked at what was coming, Izuku Midoriya, Tekken, they took all that into account, and they made changes, they made adaptations, they expanded and evolved that deck into something new. It was designed to counter what they suspected was the most represented character, and then it was. And it was also designed to fill in a few of the gaps, make this a lot stronger, not having to rely on a Twisty Azure, basically utilizing Bakugo's abilities with Combined Firepower, with this abusable looping of it. And it's not mentioned. Not mentioned at all. At one point, Mike Hardman played Combined Firepower 5 times in a single attack. How is that not worthy of bringing up, that we have these cool interactions? How does NA, which, yes, again, was a much bigger event, get this entire meta breakdown of characters, of cards, this representation of how this has impacted the continued learning of UVS, and 2 other events, the rest of the events, which, to be honest, are already feeling quite snubbed because they didn't get official streams. They didn't get employees coming out to talk to us and get engaged with the community. We didn't get everything else that NA got. And when you have players responding to comments from the company asking what would enhance their play experience by going, oh, stop supporting EU. When you have regional champions talking in other Discords about how Unga Bunga and Ataki we are, without highlighting the depth and knowledge that we go into when countering these picks. We had the one person basically saying, oh yes, EU just play Monkey Brain plays. It's like, do you realize the deck that won is an expansion of Broberg's? They took Broberg's and they evolved it to match not only our meta, but to fill in the gaps that Broberg had now seen in his own deck. It just aids this misconception that EU players don't matter, that Oceanic players don't matter. And it sucks universities and UVS have come so far compared to 2 years ago, compared to 3 years ago, compared to last year. The way EU players are treated is so much better. The way the access we have, we got Tekken first. For the first time, we were ahead on products. It isn't even out in NA yet. And it's not being mentioned in this article that yes, these characters, these cards saw play. And it sucks. You could have literally hyped up Tekken for the NA release next week by pointing out the Tekken cards that made it into Devil Jin, that made it into these decks. It really does suck, and I really hope I've built up enough goodwill with the company and my friends understand that I am doing this because this sucks so much. Could you imagine if this was on the other foot? If we dropped an article from the company that went so in-depth into how the EU meta and how the Oceanic meta is establishing and shaping the game, and then we feature a handful of decks from an NA event, the NA players would lose their shit. It would be absolute anarchy. And it really does suck. And I'm not calling out anyone in particular. I'm not saying that this article is bad. It's just not enough. This could have been a separate article just highlighting the decks that came after a regionals breakdown. I really don't want to be at odds with the company anymore. You guys are doing so much good stuff. I have so much more faith in you than I used to. But when you pull shit like this, it just undoes so much. I will always be an advocate for EU players and Oceanic players to an extent. And I want to see more of this. More of the character breakdowns, more of the set breakdowns, more of how defining errors been. Izuku Midoriya is defining an error. We had him for 2 weeks, and he was the most represented character in our regionals. One of our players that got into top 4 had to go through 4 of them. I think every single player in the top cut faced at least one of them. It was absolutely insane. You want to cherry pick decks, then go deeper. Well, our events are smaller, so you have more options to pick from that you could highlight. We had a Reiner from David, which was so goddamn impactful. We had Rocco on Byakugo, and it was a hell of a deck. I don't know how Rocco always has a referee jury in hand, but he fucking does. It's just such a shame to see that we had this new card pool, this transition of an era from AOT with new MHA, with new Tekken, and it's not referenced at all. And it's not like these cards are going to get much reference. When we get to Nationals, it's all going to be about AOT too. Maybe some Star Trek if it is impactful, but I think that's more going down a new multiplayer format sort of way, looking at the cards. So leveling might get a mentioning, but it will all just be about how impactful Origins of Power has been for the Nationals meta, and it sucks. Do better, UVS, please. You cannot drop an article about defining errors, about card breakdown, about characters for one regionals, and then not do the same for everyone else. It cannot be one rule for one and one rule for everybody else. You have to treat the regions equally. And you are doing that in your organized play and stuff like that. I understand if the amount of regionals change based on play rates, that's fine. But in your coverage of events, in your breakdown events, you cannot just go, oh yes, NA gets all of this, and Oshi gets nothing, and EU gets a little bit more than Oceanic, because that is not going to grow the game. We have so many people looking at this game that have got interest in this game now. A region that had no player base last month now had a 7-person pre-release. Wales had no stars, no player base, no real interest. The game had been dropped. I went out there to help a friend do a demo day, and they had a 7-person pre-release. One of the biggest pre-releases in the area. I mean, it matched Hastings, which is growing, and it was just below Sheffield, which is our biggest area. The game is growing out here. But if we don't get the same coverage, if we don't get the same support, why would players stick around? Why would an EU player come into the Discord and hear all the trash satire that's being thrown around? Why would they go onto Facebook and see people saying that their player experiences would be enhanced if international play wasn't supported? Why would they come to the articles and see a full breakdown on how impactful Atlanta has been and how it highlights the amazing use of Attack on Titan Battle for Humanity cards, and then look at the Oceanic and EU regionals breakdown, and it's just 5 decks, 2 of which are classed as called Rogue when they're not. They are established meta decks. And we get no talk about Izuku Midori on the move, the Dark Hero challenges. No talk about Tekken, no talk about the Tekken promos, Paul Phoenix, Devil Jin. There's nothing in there about the fact that our meta was different. There's no analytic information in there. It is just about the decks. There's nothing about the event. And this event was amazing. We had birthdays, and we sang happy birthday to everyone.
I have been request to ask if anybody will be willing to put on their little singing voices and sing happy birthday to Paul Goldman's first year in business, to Richard's birthday is...
I don't know.
Today. And then a couple of past birthdays, we've got Stephen and Bruce's birthday to Aaron Shaw. So, Brett Cricket to be the first person to
You're saying happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Stephen. Happy birthday to you.
I don't want to make content like this anymore. I don't want to sit here and pick apart articles, compare and contrast, and talk about the inequality within the regions. It doesn't help. But you have told us you want to be the best card game out there. You have told us you want to be the best. And I will hold you to that standard. And this is not the best. This is barely adequate. 2 weeks after our regionals, 4 weeks after Oceanic, drop our articles, and it's just deck lists. And yeah, it's cool to read. It's cool to hear what the design team want. It's cool to see what the design team and the playtesters are doing. But it's not this. It is not talking about controlling. It really does suck. I mean, it even says here at the bottom, at this time I'm writing up our Oceanic Regionals that has just concluded, beginning to examine the results of the event as well. Where's that? Why did we get a playtest one? Why right here at the bottom are we getting an article from UVS saying that there is an article coming to talk about Oceania, not lumping it in with Europe, no stuff like that. Was it an afterthought? Was it just something that was forgotten? And I might be burning every bridge I have got with UVS right now. But be better. This is not better. This is not great. I want to defend UVS. I want to talk about the clarity. I want to talk about how the communication's improving. I want to talk about the amazing job the staff is doing. And I want to just go in to say, like, things, the bans and erratas, great choices. As much as it may hurt me, the erratas felt perfect. It was a perfect power leveling. Fight me on that. I will kill on this hill that the Smiling Titan is fine now. Azor probably did outlive its welcome and just should have died a while ago. Risky should never have been printed. You did great there. You have been making such good decisions. You have been making such transparency of decisions. And you have been coping with decisions that you have been forced into very well. But this is an L. This is a massive L to the company. It's a massive L to the community. And it sucks not being able to talk about how we took the winning deck from NA and expanded it further. Not highlighting the underdogs through Yasha that came in. Not talking about the innovative plays of No Foundation Mimic. Not looking at the Irwin lists from Oceania, NA, and EU and comparing, contrasting them. Not talking about how these events have impacted the future of the game and how it sucks. Because I really don't want to be doing this. But when you give us so much information, so much of a breakdown, so talk about format health and character distribution and learning from these events, what you're saying to us is you're not learning anything from the EU and Oceanic events. That the Dark Hero Challengers cards and the Tekken cards were not as impactful as AOT when they were. Not talking about the way that we innovated with disarming glands or strategic meeting and adapted to the meta with these new cards. It is just saying that NA is impactful to the game and Oceanic and EU are there as well. It sucks. I want this game to grow. I want this game to be the best in the world. And I want this company to achieve that. And that is why I will hold them to this standard. That is why I will sit here and potentially burn every fucking bridge I have with this company and with everyone in the NA to basically say, EU deserves more. Oceanic deserves more. We deserve more than a breakdown from the playtesters of a few of their favourite decks when NA got this. If you'd done the same for NA as you had EU, I would be here. If you hadn't highlighted that you were writing up the Oceanic Regionals and examining the results for that, I wouldn't be here. But you told us something was going to happen, and we got something else. We innovated, we controlled, we played with different card pools. These events were so different and had access to so many different cards. I was excited to see how UVS was going to write that up. And we get this. And it sucks. The article doesn't suck. I mean, apart from calling Godzilla a rogue deck. That's fair. These were hard work. I know Jonathan and Ben put a lot of work into their decks. I know that Kai, Ewan, and Torin from Akihabara are great, and they worked really hard to get there. And I'm sure that the playtesters that went for the articles and picked these decks put a lot of hard work into this. I'm not calling out anyone individual. I am saying that when you say you're analysing results and we don't see it, why? When you present an article going so in depth into an NA event and then Oceanic gets 3 decks, EU gets 2 decks. Why? Why could we not have had a similar article? You had less data to go through. This would have taken less time to do an EU and Oceanic one than this. And you'd be able to highlight Tekken, you'd be able to highlight Dark Hero Deku. You could have highlighted the great choices of the Sheffield lot for putting this Arming Glance in there. You could have talked about the Smiling Titan deck and seen how AOT cards impacted and the fact that it's made it into the top 8. The No Foundations Mimic list and the fact that it was using actions and it was able to abuse the mulligan rule by going first and getting a second mulligan. But no, we get 5 decks, one of which we don't even get the name of. We don't even, I think it's Ben Martin, but I don't know, it's just additionally a character. We didn't even get the name of the person that played this, but from the Disarming Glance and the way that the deck is built, seeing as I faced it, I think this is Ben Martin. And it sucks. I don't want to be here making it. You don't want to really listen to me rant about this. But when you compare and contrast these articles, it's not good enough. The new the new Origins of Power is dropped. It looks amazing. It looks like it's going to be impactful. And that is another reason as to why this article was a great chance to highlight Dark Hero Arc, the Tekken clashes, the Tekken promos, because they're not going to see the spotlight. Unless someone like Luke or Kai goes even further, but I don't think it will. This was the new shiny toys are out. We're getting even more shiny toys in 4 weeks. We're getting even more shiny and stabby toys in 8 weeks. And I think the Tekken promos and those stuff like that, unless something major goes down, will not get the highlight they deserve and will not get the breakdown and how impactful they were to Oceanic and Regionals meta because this article let us down. It absolutely sucks, and I understand if people do not feel as strongly as I do, but when you come off hype of recording reveals to numerous messages of people expressing their disappointment, anger, and sadness of how our regionals has been written up, it hits you. It sucks. And I initially wrote it off by saying, no, it's because they featured banned cards. But then I was like, why isn't Kyle mentioned here then? No Foundations Mimic is a community favorite. Where is it? Then it was pointed out to me that, yeah, this deck has risky, so it can't be about bans. So, yeah. It sucks. And I'm sorry if UVS doesn't like that I'm calling this out. I don't even apologize really. I just want you to be better. You guys want to be the best card game. You guys want to be the best. I want us to be the best community. And shit like this just widens the gap that people feel between NA and EU. Shit like this just says there is a divide between us because Atlanta got this massive write-up about how impactful the cards were, and even though we had new cards, even though we had a different card pool, even though our most represented character was a brand new character that only dropped 2 weeks beforehand and would have been a great opportunity for the article to break into why that is, we got 5 decks picked by the playtesters to what their favorites are and how cool they are. And yes, that's a nice read. But it's not this. It's not defining errors. It's not card breakdowns. It's not character breakdowns. It's not what's been learned from it. It is just the playtesters picking their favorite decks and giving us a brief description as to why they were their favorite decks. And as cool as that is to be highlighted, for the winners, for the top 8, for the players who were playing other unique decks, that were playing the new cards that came out, that deserved to be highlighted in an article, it sucks for them. This annoys me more than not topping. This annoys me more than checking a 1. This just hurts to see this difference in articles, to see how our event is treated when we had a completely different card pool. I was so excited to read about how a 12-person event was going to be written up. I was so excited to see how our 68-person event was going to be written up because the card pools were different, our approaches to the games are different, the way that we build our decks are different, the way that the Sheffield guys over-analysed and prepared for Deku and for other cards in the meta was really cool, but it's not reflected here. I've reflected it, I've talked about it, we had Mike on interviews, we've had Yasha for interviews, I interviewed the top 8, but we're a tiny channel. We get a couple of hundred views maximum. we're growing, and I do appreciate UVS for the tips and help that they've given me to grow. But articles like this get thousands. They get read up by the big companies. They get read up by Gamer, IGN. They get read up by people who collect. They get people who are looking for news. They get all the people that don't know our content exists. And all they're seeing is 5 decks. 5 very cool decks, but no breakdown. No, this is what we think the new era of UVS is going to be. How impactful was Izuku Midori on the move? How impactful was the Tekken promos? Just 5 decks. And it sucks. It really, really sucks. I'm going to call it there. I started off angry, and now I'm just sad. Yeah. And honestly, I might take a break. Just from the game in general, really. Keep an eye out for previews. Keep an eye out for other news that comes out. But I think, yeah. No. Catch you in a bit.